You're listening to the Immigration Lawyers Toolbox Podcast, the podcast that keeps your practice sharp and your clients happy. I'm your host, immigration lawyer John Khosravi, and every week we're bringing you insights, tips, and real-world conversations with top immigration attorneys and industry leaders. Whether you're here to grow your practice, stay on top of the latest trends, or get inspired, you're in the right place. Ready? Let's go. Hello, fellow Toolboxers. Thank you for joining us for episode number 408 of the Immigration Lawyers Toolbox Podcast. This is a really cool one, a little bit different than usual. It's an interview we did with Mia Giacomazzi. I think it is Italian. I've been having problems with Italian last names. It's almost it's as if people are doing Middle Eastern last names like mine is hard. Italian could be tricky, but I think I got it. But we had a great interview. A lot of us talked about her background, but also the Rome District Conference, the AILA chapter, which is one of the best. Most interesting online listserv, but also the conferences are very interesting. They're going to have their conference in Frankfurt in I think 2 months from now. But we got so lost in talking about life in America, identity, and our conversation that I really forgot to get into that. So I want to let people know that the RDC or Rome District Conference is happening. Definitely a fun thing to go to, European travel and everything. But check that out. But Mia does a great job just talking about her practice, living the dream of having a fully remote practice, living in Europe while practicing in the United States. Really cool stuff and living the lifestyle. Before we start, I want to remind everybody about our course, not just our course, but our community on circle.so. Getting off Facebook, so we have discussion groups, videos, training sessions, all that kind of stuff there. It's a great way to just take things to the next level for your practice, whether you're a new lawyer getting into immigration law, or you've been doing it for a long time. A lot of information sharing behind a kind of a wall so that we could talk more openly, not have all the disclaimers needed for consumers who might be watching this kind of information. But if you want to join, just email me info@immigrationlawyerstoolbox.com or go to our website, iltbox.com or immigrationlawyerstoolbox.com. Go on the community page, fill in the information. I need to verify that you're a private attorney. That's what we don't let anyone just automatically join the group. So I need your bar information. That's really what it is. And then there we have video, hours and hours of video training and free stuff, but also our premium courses about how to start a marriage immigration practice, fast forward years of your life, and on the first case you get paid off and then some. Also EB1A, E2 courses that we started. That's really good, just launched. So you get all that information there, but always just reach out to me, info@immigrationlawyerstoolbox.com. Having said that, all the information right here is not intended as individual legal guidance. Please consult with an attorney about your case, but y'all knew that already. Let's get the show started. Hi, Mia. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thanks for inviting me. This is exciting. Before we dive in, can I have like a small fangirl moment?
Sure.
I want to say, I've been watching your podcast and, received your newsletter, seeing what you're doing online and putting together the toolbox and all that. And I've really admired it from afar.
Thank you.
My own background was in education. I was a teacher before I was a lawyer, and then I taught as an adjunct professor at a law school for a couple of years. I have a really deep appreciation for legal education, and particularly in immigration law, where it's so invaluable, where you have USCIS and DOS adjudications that are discretionary, largely unreviewable. We don't have, in most instances, the stability of stare decisis, and the law is just changing, rapidly and daily and across so many different areas that having a forum where people can come and give best tips and best practices and what they've done, what works, it's absolutely critical. It's absolutely valuable. And so before we get started, I appreciate that you bring people on to like raise them up, but I want to give you a little bit of a shout out too, to
Thank you.
say that I really do value like your vision and the resource that you provide for us. And I think it's pretty cool, and I'm grateful to be a part of it today.
Well, very kind of you. I appreciate that. That's a great way to start the morning over here in LA. Just give people a heads up. You're actually in Europe. Are you in the Netherlands right now in Amsterdam?
I'm in Amsterdam. I'm a California native. I was born I was raised in Central Valley and went to school in San Diego and Santa Clara, but moved to the Netherlands almost 10 years ago. So that I'm an immigrant to the Netherlands.
So there's a lot of history because I saw on your website too. You said you help milk cows and stuff like that. Is that correct, or am I misreading that?
I mean, and no, I mean, you're talking to the 1994, 95 Kings County Dairy Princess, not to
Wonderful.
be confused with the Dairy Queen, but yes, cows. And, I mean, it's why I've been naturally drawn to immigration law, right? I mean, I grew up on a dairy farm in the Central Valley. It's one of the largest farming community, areas in the world
Mhm.
and the most productive in the world. And wouldn't have been, I wouldn't have the opportunities that I've had, and my family wouldn't have had the success it had. I mean, it's a farm that's been going since 1893
Mhm.
without immigrants.
Wow.
Growing up on the dairy and on the farm, there was just this constant feeling of, fear of La Migra from the people who were my babysitters, who were my friends, who were the people that I, grew up with. They were my neighborhood. And so um it's really um
Personal, yes.
my
Yeah.
way to give back. It's my ikigai, let's say,
Mhm.
like I love H-1Bs. I do them all the time. My husband was an H-1B from India engineer when I met him, 20 years ago. And I love doing all of those, the tech side of visas,
Mhm.
but my heart really belongs in the H-2B, H-2A world,
Mhm.
and particularly bringing them the full circle of through the perms and then the
Yeah.
adjustments.
Well, that's gonna be going through a lot of upheaval in the coming days. Now it's the coming months or years, but it's like coming days are gonna get a lot of changes there. What did you go to law school intending on becoming a lawyer? I'm not allowed to law school. I'm sorry. Did you go through? Did you growing up knew you were going to become a lawyer, or then go to law school?
Always, yeah, yeah,
And was
for
immigration
sure.
law the specific area, or you just kind of like be a lawyer and kind of
You
figure it out?
know, I no, I don't know, like, I always wanted to do something related to agriculture. I wanted to be a lobbyist at some point. Then when I was in law school, I did do, like, immigration, law clinics, and
Hmm.
was doing like refugee stuff and T visas and U visas and that sort of a thing. But I was also starting to become interested in international law. um and so went out and practiced in the Northern Mariana Islands, and then came back and was a federal district court law clerk um, for many years. But I
Wow.
was like the immigration specialist in the court. So I did a whole bunch of civil litigation, but on behalf of the court for all of the judges, district judges, and magistrate judges in the district for several years. And then I joined the US Attorney's Office as a criminal immigration prosecutor. So I was prosecuting illegal entries for many years under the Obama administration. Um,
So is
and
that
then it
like
wasn't
with the
until I
immigration court or U.S. attorneys, like in federal
no,
court?
no, with the federal United States federal court. That's
So
right.
you would prosecute illegal entry on in federal court?
Illegal reentry in federal court, but it wasn't. So in that case, we had very strict guidelines and I had prosecutorial discretion. So we weren't just picking people up and then putting them in prison because they were, the guys who were with their head down working hard
Yeah.
and happened to be illegally present, they were not coming on our radar. We had very strict guidelines for the people that we would use our discretion to prosecute during those years,
Hmm.
and so it was only re-entries, and it was like, okay, they had to have this past criminal history. The past criminal history had to be an aggravated felony, and we were specifically looking at, felonies related to, like, uh, crimes of violence, domestic violence, drug trafficking, like, but big drug trafficking, not, like,
Yeah.
simple. And then they had, previously been prosecuted, done their time, been deported, and now they were back, and the only reason we knew they were back because they were in jail again, because now
Yeah.
they were accused of another crime. And so I was the immigration prosecutor, let's say, but I wasn't prosecuting immigrants. I was prosecuting criminals. And that was kind of a different situation than what I'm doing right
Why would they
now,
use
right?
like federal resource, like federal court? Like, why not just have ICE get him and send the immigration court to do removal again or something like that, or expedited removal? What made these different? Because if they're double entry, they're on permanent ban, permanent bar. They would I should just pick them up and get like a expedite the process through court, right? Or
So they do the deportation after the prison sentence, and what makes them different is the criminality of it. So if you're just someone who in those years came across someone's desk,
hmm
then, HSI or ICE or whoever it was at the time would pick them up. I was working with, HSI and, um, yeah, ERO.
hmm
They would come through, but it was the criminality, like, you had to meet our certain factors. It
Okay,
wasn't just anyone, it was someone who was a threat to the
I see.
society because of their, long history of, criminal convictions, and that the convictions, were aggravated felonies.
I see.
So, again, it wasn't although I was an immigration prosecutor, I was also but it I always considered myself, prosecuting criminals
Yeah,
and not the who happened to be immigrants,
yeah,
and then they would go to the deportation, but it was a different thing. I was also doing civil rights enforcement at that time, so, like, police abuse
yeah,
cases, hate crimes, that sort of a thing, and then about 10 years after and then when we left, I thought I would go back, and then everything changed. Then all of a
yeah,
sudden, those guidelines weren't there anymore, and they were going after anyone and everyone, whether they had the criminal
yeah,
records or not, and the civil rights programs were,
yeah. Because this was in June
disbanded.
2016, so it's when the administration changed the
That's
first
right.
administration. Okay.
Yes, yes, yes,
And then,
yes.
based on your LinkedIn record, at least, like, you changed you had a couple of years of break potentially, or and then you started practicing immigration private practice?
That's right. So we came over here and I finished up some things, was working on appeals, this sort of a thing with the US Attorney's Office still.
Mhm.
Um, and then it kind of came down on high. Well, she's not living in the district, so we can't keep her on. And so then I really had some time. I came over with 2 little kids and 2 little dogs, and I was thinking, "Okay, how can I make this work?" Like, I wanna live in Europe, but I want my passion and who I am is to practice law. So and I've always enjoyed immigration law, but can I do that from afar? Like,
Mhm.
can I practice as an attorney while living in Europe? And then the answer was yes. It was the first time in my, practice that I had entered into private practice, which was a little different and enjoyable, but I learned that, in practicing, business immigration, for example, we could do everything on
Yeah,
on paper, we could do everything online or send things through. There were tools, and what ended up, you know, really helping or building the practice was actually the lockdown because then clients didn't expect to see anyone, and at some point, didn't really wanna waste the time
yeah,
coming down to the office when they can just call me up while they're driving around on their commute into the office or when they're driving around, the fields in their truck, and so it actually really helped,
mhm.
me build the practice, and I was working, with another law firm, of counsel, and then about a year and a half ago, I started my own law firm, Dennison Immigration, which has been fantastic.
Wonderful. So you're living the dream. How a lot of times when you have a dream and when you reach it, you're like, oh, it wasn't that good, or there's these issues. How has it been? Because everyone wants to move to Europe and work remotely. That sounds like, yeah, like most immigration lawyers. How has it been? Pluses and minuses.
Like, I live each day with gratitude. I truly do, and what's interesting is that, like, you're posting on LinkedIn a lot and you're interacting with the groups, and it is like, you're positioning yourself as a thought leader, and I think, I know a lot about, H-2Bs and perms and adjustments for people who are really hard, but my posts that resonate with everyone are, "Look at me, working from Belgium today. Look at
Yeah.
me working from India today. Here
Yeah.
I am working from Slovenia and Croatia today," or "It is the dream." I get a lot of response, and actually it's come to the point where I've started to build up this global mobility part
Yeah.
of my practice. Part of it is in the global mobility landscape is to help, you know, people to come to Europe to uh retire,
Yeah.
or to come to if we need to park certain employees outside of the US while they're waiting for adjudication
Hmm.
or for processing, then there are certain countries that benefit from certain other things, or you know but a big part of it is, yeah, lawyers who are saying, is it possible? Can I have a remote law firm? Can I go live and work in Europe and have, and also be a lawyer, be the
Hmm.
person who I want to be and practice? And the answer is yes. But having said that, yeah, there's a lot that goes on with it, right? I mean, when you have a cross-border practice, I have 2 business entities, one in California and one in the Netherlands. They work together. There's a taxation as it relates to both countries, as well as my personal taxation that, and there's treaties, and it's all individual between the countries. And then,
Are you on
as it
E2 over
relates
there,
to
or yeah? I don't too much personal. Are you on E2 like the you're
No, I'm not. So we moved over here, and my husband was on a highly skilled migrant visa, which is the equivalent of an H-1B. And then I was an equivalent, let's say, of an H-4, but I was allowed to work
oh,
on that, like the trailing
nice.
spouse, let's say, visa. And then after 5 years, we became eligible for naturalization or
So they jumped from like the
EU
visa to
permanent
naturalization.
residency.
No Did you get residency or?
So now I have an EU permanent residency,
Hmm.
um, and my husband has now Dutch citizenship, and I'm waiting for my ceremony
Oh
for
wow, congrats.
naturalization.
Okay.
But there's some immigration lawyer workmanship that we're doing here, because the Netherlands doesn't allow dual citizenship, but only under certain
Yeah.
situations. And so, anyway, but yeah, I mean, this is his third citizenship. He started with India, then he had to give up India to get the US, and now we're trying to keep the two,
Yeah.
and let's see how it goes. And but yeah.
How does it work with regard to kids and stuff, schooling, or are they adjusting? How does that all work?
When my kids came, they were 3 years old and 3 months
Oh
old,
wow, that's all they know.
and so this is really the
Yeah.
only life they've ever known.
How was it for you having a 3-month-old traveling? That seems a 3-year-old, that seems like
Oh,
a
that's
lot.
the best time to travel with 3-month-olds, because 'cause they're just
Yeah, 3
quiet.
months
It's
not
like the
bad, yeah.
3-year-olds
Yeah.
when they wanna toddle around, or the 2-year-olds that those are harder on the long haul. But my kids, both of them, the first time they'd ever gone on a long haul, they were 2 months old, 3 months old,
Mhm.
and then they do it multiple times a year, from here either to India or to California or to other places, far and wide. In their schooling system, we get time off every 6 weeks, either 1 to 2 weeks off every 6 weeks or so, and then 6 weeks in the summer, and we go. Every
Nice.
6 weeks, we go somewhere fun
That's
and
awesome.
different. And I might be working from there. That's the
Yeah.
work-life integration, but that's, the trade-off, right? Like, it's not as if I'm, you know, offline.
Yeah.
I spent 3 weeks in India this summer, and it wasn't like I was offline, but it just feels different when have your feet in the going sand,
Yeah.
um, and then you're working on your laptop and I mean, I was the most productive that week in Goa than I was, the 2 weeks before in the Netherlands, that's for sure, right?
And the extra benefit of doing work like that is typically when people take vacations, they just shut down the computer and leave for a week. When they come out, they have double the amount of work. And so they go from relaxing to being slammed with all this backed up work. But if you just could trickle and get it in while you're abroad, it's a smoother reentry when you come back. It's not hit with a bunch of stuff.
For sure, for sure. There's no and luckily I'm building a team that's really good, that I can rely on to, take some things off my plate if
Yeah.
I wanna have a lighter week, um, or if there are certain things related to time zones. But, like when I was in India, I have a collaboration going on with a great, law firm now that's in India, and so we were all in the same time zone, and we got so much work done. It was fantastic, right?
Yep. Yep.
Um,
That's
yeah,
that's
and
yeah.
and again, like with time zones, for example, like, people worry about, okay, like I'm, 6 hours ahead of Eastern, 7 hours ahead of Central, and 9 hours ahead of, Pacific, and I've had clients from, New York to Alaska, and all the time zones in between, and now I have, clients in all countries of the world, and there are certain time zones that I feel the most comfortable with, Eastern and Central. It just seems to work, and the clients know, like, call me, between 8 a.m. and noon, or some of my clients are early birds. They'll call me at 5 a.m. their time, which is like 11 or noon my
Yeah.
time. It's fantastic, but it's amazing that when you set the boundary with, and just do your time
Mhm.
blocking, and they know, well, I just have to call her between, these, and I'm always available by email, but if
Yeah.
we need to have like a video call or a phone call, those are the times to get me, and it's never been an issue. It's never been an issue. It's
Mhm.
fantastic. And uh, in today's world, like I'm in the room when we're doing, like, adjustment interviews with my clients. It might be by telephone, but I'm in the room when, with audit, investigators,
Mhm.
and or, USCOL or FMLA, or, all of those when we have investigations, and I'm in the room, I'm at the table, but I'm on FaceTime or I'm on a telephone, and my clients will say, like, "You had the biggest presence in that room today, even though you weren't there."
Mhm.
And it's truly, with the technology that we have now,
Incredible,
and the
yeah.
clients are open to it, and you it's I mean, it's fantastic. I'm Yeah, if I can help people understand that, you can live the dream. I mean, it's not a dream for everyone,
Yeah.
obviously, and some people feel like, you know, there are trade-offs. We don't live close to family. You don't have that kind of support system. But we live in between our families now,
Mhm.
I suppose. Yeah.
Yeah, you could have international family too. So anyways, going back to India to California, you're right in the middle. Yeah, I mean, some people do like
Yeah.
going to an office and driving and like going to like hearings and stuff like that. But for a lot of those immigration practice, not only is the practice area really interesting, but the technology makes it super flexible like this. Where, I mean, at this point, like the USCIS started doing adjustment interviews again, and if I'll sometimes do if the client really needs it. But for most part, like I rarely need to leave my house to do anything. So I have smaller kids. I have a 3-year-old right now, so waiting for him to get a little bit bigger so he's not all crazy on the plane running around and wanting to like push me, do whatever, go on and kick the chair, all that kind of stuff that kids do. But we're getting geared up for having like a lifestyle kind of practice where you travel really soon.
Well, I mean, that's exactly right. You don't have to leave your house, and you can still be the professional that you wanna be in, but you can just do it from anywhere, and the courts, with the new technologies that are out, the courts, USCIS,
Yeah,
I get it depends on which,
which off it just
office
yeah,
it is,
it does.
but, and I mean, I was watching your podcast with Samir, and was interested in hearing that, he was saying that, like, that most of the immigration courts are allowing him to
Hmm.
appear, by Zoom or telephonically on these NTAs, which, in my area of practice, we haven't seen it yet, but I'm expecting to see it, and I'm kind of gearing up for it, let's say, because we have a bunch of, like in the H-2B world, right? When they adjust
Hmm.
and they're in EB other world, other workers category, it's, super oversubscribed,
Yeah.
it's, backlogged. But there was this very large group of people who were able to file their adjustment papers right before a big 3-year backlog.
Yeah.
So they've been sitting, with their EADs for 3 to 4 years in, authorized stay, but unlike an H-1B person, we don't have another visa to give to them. And if these NTAs start issuing for those types of people, they'd really only be qualified for H-2Bs. However, it's just such a long process. So like if my clients get NTAs right now, the quickest we could get an H-2B visa for them if we started new would be April 1st of next year. So that's,
Yeah.
6, 7 months down the road, and the likelihood, I mean, that would only be if their employer got in Group A, and I feel like there's a lot of uncertainty with H-2Bs right now because in the last couple of years, there's been, it's been kind of a nice uh, maybe we'll look back on these as the golden years because there was, like, high, levels of supplemental visas, like 47,000,
Hmm.
almost 50,000 visas, and how you could apply for those visas were determined very early in, the first half of the season. By November, you knew how many supplementals there were for the first half of the year, the second half of the year, you knew how to apply for it, you knew when they were gonna become available, and so everyone could plan accordingly a year in advance. And we've still had the benefit of that decision making from the past administration up to this point, because the last administration made decisions on the H-2B program that continued through April, this full season. But October 1st, we're already starting that season and no one's talking about returning workers. We have no idea how many H-2B visas there will be.
Yeah.
We have no idea, under Trump 1, under the last administration, there was 47,000, returning worker visas. Under Trump 1, there were 16,000. That's like a third. And instead of knowing in November what the process was, they'd wait till the visas were over. Then they'd start, taking
Yeah.
comment and talking about it, and by the time they made any decisions on this very small number of supplemental visas, the season was almost over.
Mhm.
And so then, you had trouble at the consulate saying, "Why am I gonna give you this visa for a month or, 6 weeks?" You had trouble at the border, you had trouble, it
Yeah.
was, and so no one, I think, knows at this point whether, and so it affects, my clients, with our short-term and long-term strategies, kind of going forward.
I mean, that's something we're going to see is like not only is there the tariffs causing massive inflation, but a lot of the farms are just going to let food rot on the field because they don't have people. There's just no systems for it. So we're going to see produce costs go skyrocket. They already are, and they're going to get even worse. So I just wonder, like, it's really haphazard, random, like lashing out of policy making and slash laws is kind of like insane. What's There's no organization or
I know,
planning
I
there.
mean, the irony is the very people, like, harvesting our food, like, getting the rocks that are, like, the building blocks of our homes, like, from out of quarries or, mowing our lawns, like, these very people are who are driving our trucks to deliver food or to deliver, like, our Christmas gifts from Amazon, like, they're being portrayed as the villains, when in reality, I mean, the US economy would collapse without them. And we already see it, right? I mean, it's not just the tariffs, it's the shrinking of the economy because we have the lowest number
Yeah.
of immigrants right now. And in these industries that are being villainized, it's the areas in which US workers will not do those jobs. They will not perform those jobs. They're not going to pick tomatoes. They're not mowing lawns. They're not carrying 80-pound rocks out of stone quarries. They're not cooking in the kitchens of the hotels or doing the housekeeping. Um, so it doesn't make sense. And another headline this week was that you know, uh a commercial truck driver made an illegal U-turn
Yeah.
in Florida and killed someone, and now no truck driver visas are going to be issued. Well, truck drivers are on H-2Bs, and so, that's a question. I mean, is that political rhetoric, or will that somehow trickle down into an actual policy? Who will enforce it? Is it going to be the DOL? They're on H-2Bs or EB other workers. And so is DOL going to enforce that? Is it USCIS? We going to go through the whole process of H-2Bs just to be denied at the
That's probably gonna
USCIS
do. They're gonna get people to
side?
spend the money on it and then go to the embassy and just say no. Are there even that many trucker H-2Bs out there? Is that like
A
a lot?
lot of
Okay.
them.
I didn't even know,
Oh,
because I
yeah.
was wondering, like, I thought it was just more nominal they're saying, 'cause I'm like, how many, trucker visas are there? I didn't realize there was a category that would be used for that.
Yeah, I mean, there's huge amounts. I mean, and there's 2 categories of truck drivers. So there's H2A truck drivers, and those are the ones who are in the fields, like, when they're harvesting the
Mm,
crops, they
yeah.
will put them in trucks, and then those trucks will ship the, harvested agricultural goods to, like, packing warehouses, and then they will ship those out, and distribute them across the country. Those are the H2A truck driver visas, and then the H2B truck driver visas are huge in the wintertime because they're all your Amazon package
Oh, wow.
deliverers. And so it's this big seasonal thing, and it sort of starts, right? Like right now when everyone is doing some sort of early shopping, and then it kind of balloons up
Mhm.
during the, Black Friday, and then it kind of continues on for at least 60 days after when people are doing their, returns. Or for example, like Taylor Swift, there was a big thing about the Taylor Swift truck drivers because she gave them all like $1 million bonuses. And so then they were trying to um start they were claiming that they were EB1 qualified because they were getting, this huge salary
Yeah.
for their job, and this it was became this, whole thing. But yeah, I mean, and another kind of area of truck drivers, which is sort of interesting with the H2B world, I don't deal with it, but it's there are like the summer, like, fairs
Mhm.
and carnivals and, like, circuses and, like, all of those things, all the state fairs that have the rides
Mhm.
and the whatever, all of those people driving all those trucks are all on
Oh,
H-2Bs.
interesting.
So, it's actually a huge industry, and I do a lot of trucking H-2Bs and EB other workers because, not a lot of people are actually are being qualified for truck
Mhm.
drivers. I mean, you know, there's constant recruitment out for these sorts of positions, and it's not like you have to narrowly tailor the position or figure out a way that you're going to do recruitment. It's like, no, anyone we always have multiple positions
Yeah.
available, and anyone who applies, we're happy to bring you in too, as well as all the other people, but no one applies ever,
Well, there's
you
like
know?
a lot of arguments. Some law firms and mostly like these pseudo law firms are saying like because truck drivers is they need more truck drivers. It qualifies under the NIW National Interest Waiver because there's a deficiency in the position, but it's not the strongest case possible. But what you mentioned about the fair is really interesting because it used to be like 3 years ago. There were like every week there was a new fair where I live in LA and we take the kids there. But in the last like 2 years, especially this year, there's like nothing going on, and I think it was because they don't have the people to run the fair, so they're not doing it.
Yeah. Where do you live in LA County?
I mean, Woodland Hills, it's the valley. So it starts after here, starts going to farming territory. But between Oxnard and here, there's constantly this time of year, especially when Halloween comes and Christmas. There's just a bunch of fairs everywhere.
Oh, yeah. I mean, hey, I grew up on a dairy farm. I was, like, showing my cows. I mean, some of my greatest memories are with the da with, at the county fairs and the state fairs and all of that, right? I mean, um
Hey, everybody, I'm going to jump in really quick to remind you of our community page on circle.so. Become a better immigration lawyer. Become an immigration lawyer, whether you're new or old at it. And old, I don't mean that bad way. It's old timers. It's kind of a badge of honor. I'm getting there myself, 15 years in this game. And every white piece of beard on me and in the hair, that's between kids and immigration law, a mix of those. But it's a great area of practice. As you see, I've dedicated my life to it, and I want to continue doing that and share that knowledge and help with you. And the primary centralized location is our community page on circle.so. To get it off Facebook, get it off all these different places, have a centralized one location that could really help you take things to the next level. And you can access our premium courses on starting a marriage immigration practice, consular processing, adjustment, and admissibility, and the rest. You'll see it all there. Just email me at info@immigrationlawyerstoolbox.com or go to our website, immigrationlawyerstoolbox.com. Click on the community page and get yourself started by sharing your bar information with us. Let's get back to the show. Well, it attaches the kids to some reality of like life is outside the city. Because you mentioned like going to the quarry and picking rocks. My kids are into like Minecraft, which is like pressing a button to like quarry stuff. And they knew actually what kind of like physical labor is required and what people are going through to do that. That will like blow their mind. To them, they love doing the idea of it digitally, but in reality, it's backbreaking labor.
Back-breaking labor, um, and and when you get a good workforce, so my clients who do it, represent a lot of quarries, and, and it's the same people coming in year after year, which is fantastic, but it's an instability, and you think about, the economic chain. Where is that stone going? It's going to builders who are building homes to house people to, address a crisis of, housing to help sort of hopefully, the more houses, the less housing will cost. But then think about, all of the jobs in the United States that are reliant upon that. If you need the stone to build the houses, then you also need all of the construction workers, and then you need, all the people who are building all, the landscapers, and you need uh, the irrigation people, the drywall people, the roofing people, the painters, and then, it's like all of that economy. Then the schools are built on it, and the government taxes for the new subdivisions that are coming in, and I mean, when you start taking away these jobs and start taking away these products, you're it it, it's almost like cutting off your nose to spite your
Yeah.
face. You're not helping the United States economy, you're shrinking it.
Yeah. That's the thing. They're picking out stuff they think is easier to do, but because it's harder to go hunt down criminals and to like, I mean, if they want to do enforcement, you just talk to employers and say don't do that. It could cut out the way they're going about it is so cruel and violent, literally. And the new USCIS director was installed, and one of the first things he's doing, he's gonna have an interview with the Center for Immigration Studies (CIS), which is like a anti-immigration group. So it was just interesting to see like the first thing he does is go talk with this group. You kind of know which direction things are going.
Right. Yeah, I know. And it's, it's like these businesses and these farms and these, quarries or these landscapers, it's like most of them are mom and pops, or they're also like, first generation immigrants, like, living the American dream. And, is this the American dream? I mean, and everything is it's not only are they making the visas impossible, but but also the heightened
Yeah.
scrutiny at every level. So, uh, the higher, the instability as it relates to will we get, um, how many H-2B visas will we get? The changing of the regulations on the H-2As all of the time. The Now all the people who are coming in, at, the Department of State have to do, the in-person interviews now, which is just totally
Yeah.
backlogging that system, which means it's gonna take forever to get them in, which means it's, you don't have a full season out of those people. At the border, they're getting stopped again, and, the heightened scrutiny and sort of all of that, so it's not, and then once they get to the work site, they're having ICE show up, and you know, and and then, even if they're not doing an investigation and it's an I-9,
Yeah.
audit, for example, and, the other day I've got this client who's going through this I-9 audit, and then they call me up and they go, "Hey, we got ICE at the door." I said, "Okay, let me talk to him." They get him on the phone. I said, "Hi, how can I help you?" He said, "We have a question about one of the I-9s that you gave us, 4 months ago." I'm like, "Okay, great. Can you put that in an email? Let me know who it is, what your question is. Let me review it. I would love to respond to you."
Mhm.
He's like, "Great." He walks out 4 ICE SUVs were in the parking lot. So they needed 4 ICE SUVs to come ask a follow-up question
Yeah.
on an I-9 that we gave them 4 months ago,
Yeah.
So they were kind of expecting some, I don't know, a scattering, or
Yeah.
maybe they were preparing for a raid if they didn't have a lawyer, but this is how we're treating US businesses who are paying taxes and contributing. I don't think you see it a lot with the businesses. I mean, you see employees, um, and we think, oh, it's not us. It's not, it's just the bad, illegals who are, but it's red-blooded, US business owners who are really the ones who are being affected because they can't get a stable
Hmm.
workforce. They can't, they're just constantly being disrupted with all of these, surprise visits and audits and investigations and raids and businesses are going to shut
Yeah.
down.
I mean, just like they don't have that big of margins anyways, and it's hard, especially after the pandemic. It's hard hiring people. And so
Precisely.
if you got to hire an attorney and then shut down the store for a day, that's like thousands of dollars in revenue. And then it's I guess there's got to be better ways to do this than just yeah, showing a 4 SUVs. I mean, that's the whole government cost too. Like we got to pay for that. Now they got all this budget too with the new bill.
Exactly.
And it's just like you got to blow
Yeah.
through that money, billions of dollars, and they're trying to cut down all these other benefits for people, healthcare. So like, none of this what's going on? None of this makes any sense.
Yeah. What is important?
Yeah.
What is important? What are our priorities?
Well, I mean, how does it look in Netherlands?
So,
Because I used to go there a lot, and I from like 2000 to 2015, there was a huge influx of immigrants there. I mean, Amsterdam went from pretty much like a white city towards looking more like me, if not darker, in Amsterdam itself. And they're having their own pushback right now, which is getting stronger and stronger. How are you like? What are you seeing over there on the national level for immigration?
I mean, and that's exactly right. It's a good point, is that, the nationalism, the wave of nationalism is not specific to the United States. There are things specific to the United States, but nationalism is on the rise also in Europe and in the Netherlands. And so, yeah, Amsterdam is a super international city. And there's an influx of people, from specific countries around. There was sort of a guest worker program for people from Turkey and Morocco that came in and then developed roots here and have been here now for a couple of generations. And the latest influx is sort of like the the guys from the US who wanna come over and be Uber drivers. But, it's changing. I think a lot of the backlash is, specific to being in the Netherlands, is that, people aren't
Yeah.
integrating at all, and people aren't learning the language. People are trying to change the Dutch society
Hmm.
quite forcefully to being, you know, and rightfully so. I mean, it's difficult to learn the Dutch language because everyone here speaks English so well.
Hmm.
Um, the
Have your kids
um,
picked up Dutch?
in the last What's
Can your
that?
kids? Yeah.
Zeker.
They,
Yeah, my kids are fluent in Dutch.
It's a weird
I
language, and not an offensive way, but like you go, street names are like 30 letters. It's like no zero zero. I'm like, how do you put it all together? That's too hard.
And after a couple of Heinekens, you start to wonder, are they speaking English? Are they speaking
Yeah.
Dutch? I don't know. It's sometimes it's very close to English. So, but the in the last elections, the party that got the most votes was led by this Geert Wilders, who is it's a very strong anti-immigration policy. But he was not elected prime minister and he is not the sort of head of the coalition. But there's been, a lot of changes in this government, and some of it, relates to that. There Since we've been here over the last 10 years, when we came here on that highly skilled migrant visa, there were a ton of benefits to having this type of visa, where you had like 10 years of tax benefits, substantial tax benefits, and then while we were here, it went from 10 to 8 and then 8 to 5, and it was retroactively applied to people who were here, which was kinda wild, and there were, like, lawsuits that we lost and,
Oh,
and
wow, that's
whatever, but
wild.
yeah, and, but then on the other hand, like, the Dutch government now, because they're very strict about nationality, um, and citizenship and don't allow dual citizenship, one of the things that's sort of circulating in the houses now here is or the commerce, is this idea to maybe allow a dual citizenship or to not
Yeah.
require the renunciation. Like in the Netherlands, they don't mess around. Like if you have Dutch citizenship and you don't, and you're not living in the Netherlands and you don't renew your passport while it's valid, you're stripped of your citizenship.
Really?
Like you cannot allow the passport to expire or lapse or you just lose your
Become
citizenship.
stateless? How does that work out?
That's the issue. That's why they're starting to think about it because, yes, it is a possibility if you don't have a second citizenship that people are becoming stateless. Um,
That's crazy. That's like you so you have to always Dutch people have to live in the Netherlands no matter what? That's kind of
I'm gonna turn on my light here
it's
because now
starting
it
to get
is
nice out
turning
there.
a little darker.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, Germany even eased it up finally like a year or 2 ago, but they're a little bit less, stringent. Speaking of yeah, I think it's like a German-Dutch thing where their words are super long because there was this process where
Yeah.
sometimes they allow dual citizenship, and this word I always failed to memorize, but, like, I was sending my clients to a German attorney to try to get that exception where Germany will allow dual citizenship. There's a special word for it. But, yeah, Austria, Germany, and Netherlands, are really strict on that issue, which is surprising. I mean, especially Netherlands because it's such an international city. They wouldn't have assumed originally that they would be as strict.
It started with this idea. We know the Dutch were the great sailors, and in the golden age, they were all going out and
Hmm.
dispersing, and they, went in South Africa, they went in Indonesia, and so then the idea was if you go and settle, you go on these travels and you settle somewhere else and you have children in those countries and they don't have a connection to this land, then they are not a Nederlander, they're not Dutch. And so it comes the citizenship does come with this idea of you need to have this identity only, you need to, have some sort of residency, some sort of connection, you need to have the language, you need to have the culture.
Hmm.
There's some interesting tests that you have to take that are all, cultural in nature, as well, and, no, but it's a great place to raise kids, honestly.
Oh, I love it there. Yeah,
Children
yeah, I used to go a lot. Rotterdam and what's that place about the Hague? All these different places, beach town. Like it's a beautiful place. You get on a train, go up and down. It's really fun.
I mean, any place, I grew up in an agricultural society, and I always say I love the Netherlands because 'cause you're not too far away from a
Hmm.
cow. There are not these huge factory farm, dairies where, where you have, 1,000 or 10,000 cows, but, that there's just, there's a lot of countryside, and any country where you can, like, drive around in the spring and then just see miles and miles of flowers. Like, I grew up with, like, cornfields and cotton fields and whatever, and those are nice. It's fun to play hide and seek in a cornfield, but to see, like, all these colorful flowers, I mean, it's just so beautiful, and, I mean, it's y you know, there is a nice harmony and a balance here between people, nature, with animals. One of the things when we first moved here, there was an issue of there was this housing crisis. In order to build more houses, there was going to be more emissions. So they couldn't build more houses to deal with the housing crisis unless they dealt with the emissions. So the way that they did that was lowered the speed limit from 120 kilometers an hour to 100, and they just like did it overnight, and like everyone just went 20 kilometers an hour slower so that they could lower the emissions to build the houses, and I just thought, I could never imagine that, and it was quick. I mean, I don't know. I mean, there's just, there's a respect and a harmony. I think that they that I appreciate, and there's a lot of independence given to kids.
Well, there's an aspect
Um,
of citizenship, and they're trying to. I mean, they just did the policy memo here where they're making citizenship naturalization more strict. But those are smaller communities.
yeah,
But if you're, Swiss from Switzerland or Dutch, like gay citizenship is not like a more just a procedural thing as it is turned into here. It's like deeper. It's like, do you really adjust to this culture? And just when you're talking, and this may probably
yeah.
controversial, but it's like, is U.S. citizenship or residency really just a way to enter the U.S. marketplace to do it here? Is that what American identity is? Just like a marketplace that there's more opportunity, or is there like a deeper thing of like, freedom of speech and rights and stuff, and that being the reason, which a lot of times it is for my clients, because especially if they're older, they come here because they want their children to grow up in a place that's freedom, as opposed to like Iran or Russia or some of these other countries. But at the same time, like a lot of it is just the marketplace of opportunity that they're coming here. It is not really about the connection to the culture or anything like that, which I mean that's which is different. From what way they're doing there. The way they could do these sudden changes in laws, because there's a unison in the people and their understanding and appreciation for what the culture, what how they view themselves.
It's a good question. And it's one that, my husband and I talk about amongst ourselves as well as with our kids. Yeah, what does citizenship mean versus nationality? And then how do you identify yourself, particularly when you're a third culture
Hmm.
person, right? Like my kids are have an Italian American mother and an Indian father and have been raised in the Netherlands. What are
Hmm.
they? How do they identify? And they're US citizens, but what does it mean? And I don't know because when I'm now living outside of my culture, I realize more how strong of an American culture there is, like when you're in the United States, you don't identify yourself as being American. It's like, oh, I'm Indian or I'm, you know, Italian or I'm Swiss or I'm Persian or I'm, whatever. But then when you actually go to, you know, in the US, I'd say I'm Italian, but then I go to Italy and it's like, no, I'm
Yeah.
American. I don't have the shared
Yeah.
experience. I may speak the language, but I don't have the shared experiences that these people had. I didn't go to the same grammar school and high school experience and have the same, lullabies and that sort of a thing. I'm truly American. And so it really wasn't until I started living abroad that I realized what American means to me and how that is who I
What
am, no
is it?
matter
What do
what
you think
country I
that's
am,
different?
what
Being an
citizenship I have.
American, what does that mean?
I mean, yeah, I guess it's different for everyone because, it really depends on what your influences are and were, but it's, it's a shared experience that any culture has. It's, having, spent, your Fridays under the Friday night lights and seeing the football players and the cheerleaders, and it's going to prom, and it's, uh, having, yeah, I guess a sense of freedom, um, but also having a feeling of, personal rights. I think that Americans really have a feeling that, at the heart of it, they're very libertarian. They don't want people to tell them what to do. And they want, um, you know, they want a freedom from government, let's say. Um, Whereas in more collectivist societies, they're okay with
Yeah.
just go with accepting new laws and changes and saying, "Okay, it's for the greater good, the collective
Yeah.
good, so we'll go with we'll go slower in our cars."
Yeah, that's probably one of the big challenges that with the demographic changes here and society is really that perspective that it goes back and forth of how much is individual as opposed to more collective. And yeah, historically America, that's the whole thing here is like individual come here on their own, like rise up potential, all that kind of stuff. And yeah, I think that's a big thing. So the next generation coming up, they're frustrated. They had much higher expectations, and they're looking to the government and say, "How come you're not producing?" People are associating more with their group identities than when I was growing up here. I'm 40. Group identity wasn't necessarily a thing. It was more like how could we be individual or just like group identity was American. But now in the last 10, 15 years, on the college campuses, like the subgroup categorization of collective group, maybe it's like the biggest thing. I know it's kind of calmed down last year or two, but that's like a big change in what it means to American.
Exactly. I mean, I was the same way, right? I mean, you couldn't be Italian, you had to be American,
Hmm.
when my families were growing up, and, um, under the melting pot era, and then there was a shift, to the salad
Yeah.
bowl, right? And, um, which I appreciate. I mean, I appreciate that. But there's something very I mean, there is something beautiful about having a society where no matter, what your cultural background, wherever your family is, something unites you. And that is, that's why the natural born citizenship of Americans, I think, truly defines who you are as an American, because that is, that creates a bond across everyone, regardless of where their families came from, right?
Yeah, that's a good point. Because before you said that, I was like hard pressed to find anything that's. I kind of grew up a patriot and American as I got older and seen the reality of Iraq War and mortality, all this kind of insanity with just stealing a bunch of money. It really jaded me as to what it is, and to think like, what is it that connects me? There's some sort of values I have from the melting pot age, from the '90s and stuff like that, which doesn't exist anymore, pretty much at all. And really, probably it is being born here. It separates those who are naturalized, but somewhat I would imagine, I would argue naturalized people are more American because they have to work for it and think about it, and probably statistically speaking, they know more about civics history just from the 100 questions they got to practice than it seems like a high schooler would know
Right.
nowadays. So they're actually more deeper into it. But these are like important questions that we're gonna have to deal with immediately right now, next like 4 or 10 years. This is like a really critical issue.
Precisely. I know, and it's like, well, my husband was naturalized as a US citizen, but born and raised in India. He came to the US after he had his master's, so he had all of his education in India. And I would say, like, "Do you feel American?" And he's like, "I'm a US citizen, but I'm an Indian." But that experience is very different from a kid who came, whose parents, from my children.
Yeah.
My children who had a, father who came and identifies as a US citizen, but an Indian, born in the US, and they don't have this connect. And we go to India, they spend all their time, that's their family, but they're not, they don't, I don't know. It's very personal how you
Yeah.
feel. My daughter is starting to feel Dutch.
Yeah.
Um,
They'd be young enough there. That's all they see. That's is there a European
but
identity
I
you
don't
guys
think
feel at
the
all?
Dutch people would think she's Dutch. That's the thing, like, they I don't know if she can ever be truly Dutch, although she could be a Dutch
Mhm.
citizen, right? Is she Dutch? I don't know. I mean, these
Yeah, and it kind of is like how the group itself views you. I've been seeing your children. I'm guessing they look different than the typical Dutch person. So that's always going to
yeah.
stand out right there. Is there any identity that you have towards the EU, that the transnational organization, or is that do you have any European identity that you all feel at all, or is it more just the states still control that?
Yes, definitely, I mean, even if I got, Dutch citizenship, I feel more I don't know. I mean, I guess it's just the bit it feels cool to have EU permanent
Mhm.
residency, let's say, and that does feel like an identity to me, and that's what I do have right now, and that is it's like I because, who knows where we'll be, maybe after my kids graduate from high school, the plan is to go to, Lake Como and spend some golden years there, and we have flexibility to be where we are. And so, we're very lucky to have that sort of flexibility in our lives. And so, yeah, but no, I think that within the EU, people are very much still, dedicated to their state. And part of that is, you know, this wave with the rise of nationalism, and also just because each country is just so
Mhm.
uniquely different and divided. I mean, they're becoming unified by, everyone speaking more English, and you have, the um, currency, but um, No, the cultures are still
Yeah.
very, very distinct,
That's interesting. Yeah, the
which I
more they
love.
try to bring things, centralize it, the more natural human beings they always do the opposite. The more they're going to get ingrained in their own subcategories. So something. I mean, it's the peace has been good since war, since they created the union and unifying the structures, the economies and stuff to avoid the craziness of the 1900s. But but yeah, that's yeah, I'm not sure how interesting it is for other people listening, but this is like a very interesting conversation. Thanks for having it. Um,
Right,
yeah,
yeah. I guess a final note on talking about, like, EU and sort of all that, it might it what I'm interested to see is, like, with Ukraine happening in one side of Europe and, not knowing what's happening with Trump, the EU is sort of now forced to be
yeah.
strengthening its own alliance and its own bond, perhaps without the help of the United States and perhaps to protect itself from the United States. I mean, maybe we're, off the record with that one. So it will be interesting to see in the next couple of years or months even sort of if there is a way back towards, this post-war, maybe pre-war, who knows, EU identity coming
Yeah,
back
I mean, this
again.
kind of forces them to take a stand rather than because that external threat always helps identify who you are to it. It's like, for better or for worse, that itself is
Definitely.
a key reaction that causes like these things to come together. But, we'll see. Yeah, it's a wild situation. I have small kids, and I'm like, I mean, we speak English at home, and my wife's Iranian as well. But I was born here. She immigrated. But as I get older, I'm like, I got to teach them the language and what the culture is. But they kind of don't care, and they kind of like they're too small still. But like, they're never gonna know the language really unless they go and live there. And there's no going to Iran right now with what's going on. So it's kind of like I could see, Jews in particular have been historically very strict about teaching, not having intermarriage, not doing this, although that's like dissipated a lot. But studying them, I realized like you have to be really strict to be able to keep the existing culture, especially if you're a nationality group outside of your own home country. To keep some semblance of the history, you got to be really strict because after a generation or two, everything could disappear and people kind of merge into the group, especially if they can look and identify like that group.
Absolutely. And in some cases, like in, the Netherlands, that's great because, that sort of a culture wants you, this culture here wants you to be able to
Hmm.
assimilate, and it causes issues when you don't. But whereas in the United States, I feel like certain cultures do have the ability to do that, right? To keep their own ethnic, history, culture, traditions while still being 100%
Yeah.
American. And maybe that's what it means to be
That is a
American. I don't
unique
know.
aspect. I'm sorry keeping you on if we need to leave. So, but like our family in France
Oh,
and in Europe, when I visit, they kind of like they're on their own communities and they haven't assimilated at all. And I like barely like they all hang out with other Iranian people and like the Germans all look kind of weird. And it's like the societies there aren't necessarily as open to accepting as America is. And I think that's a crucial part of America where you could move here and even at 40 even and become really American and then see yourself American and at least historically people would feel that too and it's the only place where foreign people could feel like they're home here, whereas if you go to Europe you always feel like a foreign person even multiple generations afterwards. Your grandpa could have came to France as a grandson, you still won't feel French, even though at the point you married here, your mom, one of your parents might have been from that country, you'll still feel like an outsider from at least my personal experience, what I've seen. It
precisely.
that's a
Yes,
big difference in America.
absolutely.
We're open. I mean, it was built to be designed like that to kind of pull out talent and bring them here like that.
And I hope it remains, and part of that is, the natural born
Yeah,
citizenship, right?
yeah. That's crazy. The president could just change decades of the legislator, no
The
legislator.
14th
Yeah.
Amendment of the United States Constitution.
Yeah, I mean, that he's trying to pass all these like I read a headline that he passed some sort of law with regard to like he executive order, some sort of criminal statute. I'm like, wait, the legislators, the presidents can't do that. I didn't read too much into what it was, but there's a lot of the legislator, the Congress itself has just been for decades now sleeping at the wheel. So it kind of hands over power to one. They just pretty much gain the bribes and just live in large on the
I
house.
know that there's no checks and
Yeah, no checks
balances. That's
balances. Yeah.
what is
That's a major that's what thing is like people
scary.
they always say, okay, we got to vote for the president for 4 years, but it's like, no, you got to vote for your representative and hold their feet to the fire. that's where it all starts. Both your state and your local presidents could come and go if these people could kind of maintain it. But this machinery that we have here has gotten way too complicated. So that's something's got to change. Sometimes these bad things that happen kind of to reset the system because right now it's not working. Whatever we have right now, yeah, it opens up to, like when you study history and you
Preach.
see like how things were happening 100 years ago, 1,000 years ago. It's like, oh, this is what people are going through. Like the political machinery wasn't working. People's like ambitions weren't being dealt with, and the money is all being centralized in the small hands of few. You like, oh, it's literally how it was. It's probably happened to Rome or these empires. This is how it happened.
Well, I mean, and how easy was immigration back in the day versus, how it is now? Like my colleague who he moved to Amsterdam like in the 80s for love. But he's from New York and he's a US immigration attorney and he was telling me the stories about, back in the day we would just go down to the courthouse with our little, you know, 9089 and walk out with a perm done in like a day. I thought, "Oh, really?" My how times have
Yeah.
changed, it's like yeah, it's just becoming super
hmm
complicated, isn't it?
And it's hard. You got to like study all day, every day, and like clients are like, "Oh, just fill out a form," and like, no, I don't understand how many things could go wrong in this process. Well, Mia, thank you so much for coming on
I
the
know.
show. I really appreciate. Hope to have you on again. If people want to reach out to you, what's the best way they could do that?
Sure, I mean, by email, mia@denizenimmigration.com. Yeah, I'd love to hear from you, and thanks for having me. This has been fantastic. Would love to come
I
back
appreciate
again.
it. Yeah, I'm glad I didn't have another meeting after this. Let me just double check because I was having a conversation. I lost. Yeah, so yeah, perfect timing. It was a day where I don't have any more meetings after this, so we could talk for a long period of time. So yeah, let me go offline. We'll talk a little bit. But again, thanks for coming on the show. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
If you like this episode, follow us on Instagram. Our handle is Immigration Lawyers Toolbox, where we post the latest statistics, tips, and more. And stay tuned for more from the Immigration Lawyers Toolbox podcast.